If you've ever been to the beach right before the sun goes down, you might notice a few things. Firstly, you see a lot of colors. You also might see silhouettes of trees and reflections in the water. For this project, we are going to be making a silhouette collage. Remember, you can always pause this video at any time to take a good look at the supplies you need or the step that we're on. For collage materials, I'll leave this up to you. You can use construction paper, magazine, tissue paper. Really, the possibilities for collage are endless. Before we get started, it might be a good idea to search on Google Images for a silhouette of a palm tree. Become familiar with what a silhouette is and notice how we're seeing solid shapes. The executive functioning skill we are going to be practicing is planning. A good way to do this would be to come up with a rough draft sketch of your final design. As you can see here, I'm going to make two different sketches for what I might do for my collage. Some items I might notice are too tiny to cut out, but for the drawing and the practice, have fun with it and decide what you might want to add for your final project. Now for one of my favorite parts, collecting your materials. Make sure if you're tearing out of magazines that you keep your materials pretty large, no smaller than the palm of your hand. That way, you don't have to take a million hours trying to assemble little tiny pieces onto your final collage. Also, try and get a range of colors. Now draw your background on your final paper. You do not need to draw your silhouettes yet. Anything that is solid black, do not draw. Now you can use construction paper or magazine and tear long strips to fill your ocean. I like to have a straight edge on the horizon line, but you don't have to. Place your yellow paper underneath your sun and complete the half circle so it makes a full circle. Then cut the half circle and place it above your horizon line. Now I want to keep my sky light blue so it stands out from my ocean. Tear nice long strips to fill in the sky, making sure to leave space for the sun. This is still a part of our planning process, so do not glue yet. I'm placing items I think I might use, and then I'm going to scoot the items off of my paper in a nice neat pile. That way I know what items I'm using for the sky and which items I'm using for the water. I like to add a couple drops of water to my glue before I begin, then mix it together and paint a tiny bit of glue onto my paper before it dries, placing my collage materials on top. You'll notice I am going to be painting small sections at a time and then placing the collage materials as I go. This is because I do not want my glue to dry too quickly before I have a chance to place the collage materials. I want to make sure that my water is completely filled and there's no white paper showing through. So make sure you're tearing pieces that will fill all of your gaps. Remember that the water will reflect the sun, so it's okay to add a little bit of orange and yellow right in front of your sun in the water. I want to make sure that my paper is large enough for the sand. So placing it underneath my project, I can see it's long enough. I also need to make sure it's tall enough. I can place it next to my project and use a white colored pencil to mark where the top of my sand is. Do that now. Now I'm going to carefully take my black paper and cut along where I made my mark. You can hold your paper whichever way is comfortable. And remember, it doesn't need to be perfectly straight because eventually I'm going to be tearing where the straight edge is. Now I need to know about how wide the sand is that I drew. I can use my hand as a measuring tool. It's about 3 fingers wide, and I need to make sure it's about 3 or 4 fingers on my paper. It's better to be bigger than smaller. So if it's 2 fingers on the bottom, I might make this about 3 fingers on my black piece of paper. Keeping my fingers really close together will make it easier to control for my tear. I want to tear along the white line that I drew. This does not need to be absolutely perfect, and it's okay if you can see a little bit of white colored pencil. If it's easier to put your paper down and tear, you can tear towards you and making sure your fingers are still close together. Because this is sand, I don't really want a straight edge at the top. I'm going to tear a tiny triangle to make the shape look a little more curved. Really, you want to tear a tiny piece and make sure it'll still fit and cover the white area. Then with my scraps, I'm ready to start on the next side of my sand. I need to make sure that my piece of paper is long enough to fill the white space. I can use my fingers, or I can take my piece of paper and lay it on the top. Then I can easily see how long it needs to be. Make a mark with my colored pencil and then tear off the excess. I should have a rectangle that will easily fit that sand silhouette. This is very important you tear a little bit at a time so that you make sure the piece is still staying large enough to cover your white area. If you do need to make sure that there's blue behind it, you can always go back and add more magazine behind it if you tear too much. Now you're ready to glue down your sand silhouette. Make sure you add a little bit of glue on the top of your construction paper so it stays down. Now we're ready to begin our tree silhouettes. Make sure your construction paper is large enough, so I use my fingers to measure about how tall the trunk will be. Then I can draw the trunk and the palms onto the piece of construction paper. Keeping in mind you will be cutting these out, so make sure all your shapes, especially your palms, are no smaller than your finger. As I'm cutting, you'll notice I'm turning my paper. This is important that I keep my scissors and my wrist nice and straight and turn my paper as I'm working. This might be a step you need to ask your parents for some help. It is a little tricky cutting out palms, but I think you can do it. I am going to flip my construction paper around so you can't see the white lines when I glue it down. Now using my scraps, this might be large enough for my small tree in the background. I want this to be smaller since it's farther away. Then, using my fingers, I'm going to measure the height of the trunk and start drawing my tree the same way I did previously. Remember, I have lots of practice drawing and cutting out palm trees, so if you don't get this right the first time, that's okay. You can always use your scraps or grab a new piece of paper and try again. Using my scraps, I am going to be adding other silhouettes. Remember, your project does not need to look exactly like mine, and if you would like to make a different silhouette, you're welcome to do so. I am going to be drawing a sailboat. Just drawing the base of my boat first, and then I'm going to be carefully cutting out the base. I am not adding the sails yet because I don't want them to be the same piece. Then for the back of my sail, I am going to be making a small triangle. I'm using my hands to measure and also to practice first, and it's okay if it's not exactly the right size the first try. You can always try again. For the front sail, I am going to be making a large capital D. You can measure with your fingers or practice in the air, whatever is helpful to make sure that you're getting the shape just how you want it. And again, if it's not exactly perfect right away, that's okay. You can get another scrap and try again. It is important to plan before you glue anything down. You might even decide to flip your boat around or that it's too big or too small. When you know it's right, then you can grab your glue and add a little bit of glue to your project, then place your pieces on top of the glue. I also like to add a little bit of glue on the top of my construction paper just to make sure everything is staying down. For the large palm tree, I recommend taking it off your paper and painting glue onto the back of your palm. The back is where I can see the white colored pencil. Then carefully place my tree onto my project. It won't stick down perfectly right away, and that's okay. I'm going to add a little bit of glue on the top of my palm tree, and then it'll really stay down. Now, as soon as you're done, make sure you wash your brush with soap and water so no glue dries in the bristles. You also want to throw away any scraps that might be left sitting around. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to see what you created.